So let's talk about being a hacker. What is hacking? So hacking is the activity of identifying weaknesses in a computer system or a network to exploit this security and to gain access to personal data or business data. An example of computer hacking is as trying to use a password cracking algorithm to gain access to a computer system. Who is a hacker? A hacker is a person who uses computer programming or technical skills to overcome a challenge or problem. There are good hackers, bad hackers, and hackers who fall in between. So with the next page, I'll delve into the types of hackers. So we have white hat, black hat, and gray hat hackers. So white hat hackers basically are security hackers who gain access to the system with a view to fix the identified weaknesses with no malicious intent. Do note that white hat hackers have authorized access to do a test on the network, target networks or target IP addresses. Then for black hat hackers, they are hackers who gain unauthorized access to computer systems for personal gain with the intent to steal corporate data, violate privacy, and transfer funds, most likely from bank accounts. Then gray hat hacker. So basically they are in between. So a hacker who are both white and black hat. So they try to break into computer system without authorized access, but with the view of trying to identify weaknesses and reveal them to the maybe corporate or organizations. Let's talk about penetration testing. So a penetration test is an ongoing cycle of research and attack against the target or boundary. So the attack should be structured, calculated, and when possible, verified in a lab before being implemented on a live target. So let's talk about the penetration steps. As a penetration tester, there are 5 steps you need to go through. Information gathering, which is very crucial. Service enumeration, exploitation, maintaining access, and exploiting recommendations. So for information gathering, there are certain tools that could be used like DNS recon, DNS enumeration tool, OES, NS lookup, and more. As before I begin on this penetration steps, I would like to talk about one basic skill that is required for penetration testers or ethical hackers or anybody entering into cybersecurity to know. You should all learn to do research. As people entering this, you learn to do research. So if maybe I'm talking about one thing today or 2 things, it's like really necessary for you guys to try to do research on those 2 things or more that I talk about, or try to learn more. It will help you go in the long run. Because if you really look at this cybersecurity, let's say network or cycle, it's difficult for you to get certain information. So Googling, researching would help you, because asking questions, people just maybe redirect you to sites, redirect you, just frustrate you. So you have to try to learn to do proper research. Let's go on. All right, so basically information gathering right now. So let's talk about information gathering. So it's basically the first step and crucial step you need to get. Say maybe you are going to do a penetration test for an organization and you're given range of IP addresses or maybe single IP, right? You just have an IP. So what's the next thing you need to do? First thing, I need to gather information about the IP address. I want to know what's on those, like what are the services on the IP, what other information I could use or get or gain that would allow me to exploit the system. So you can use NS lookup, OS, DNS recon. There's no Netcraft online. I think it's an online tool you could use to maybe get the services running, especially the name of the company you're trying to do a pen test for. All right, so let's move on to service enumeration. After you've gathered certain information, right now it all seems like pieces. different pieces scattered around, right? What you're trying to do now is try to piece them back together, right? To form maybe a map or something. So now, once you're doing service animation, one of the tools I like really using is Nmap. There's Google Document. I could share links to Google Docs later on. But for Nmap, what I like about Nmap is there are other tools out there like Masscan. So but Nmap is really good. So it gives you like more enumeration on those services. Say you have port 22, port 80 open, tells you whether it's filtered or it's closed or it's open, tells you the version running on those IP addresses, tells you the name as well as whether it's the Apache 4.0.6 version running, or could it be maybe a different type of web application with these versions. As you have those, what's the next thing that comes to mind? You Google those IPs you Google those versions. Try to find out, is there any vulnerability available out there to those web applications or target names you found? That's why the third one comes in exploitation. Now, because based on what you found, you've gathered information, you've done service enumeration, now you want to exploit it. You've already done, by doing service enumeration, you'd have done your Google search on maybe the version was vulnerable to RC, like remote code execution. So you go about trying to get RC on that target service. So once that is done, notice that suddenly you could get access to the target system. Now you now have access to maybe the root folder or maybe SSH credentials or keys you found. So what is the next thing that comes in? Maintaining access right now. Maintaining access is maybe the target user system or target system you decide to get access to, right, was turned off. As well as the shell you got would actually go off as well. I shut down my system. You already have access to the real shell on my system. I decided to turn off my system. You would lose that shell because the network connection that you had, the reverse connection you got, has been disconnected. So maintaining access comes in where maybe a malicious code. Sorry, I think someone asked a question. Right now, you won't be able to download any resource. Right now, Shagun, you won't be able to download any resource. Like after today, this PDF will be uploaded, so you can have access to that as well as the video recordings for today. Right now, this session is being recorded. So I hope that's clear. Yeah. So back to exploitation, right? So if there's a network connection, right, with the target as well as the attacker, if the victim decides to restart his or her system, you lose your shell. That's where maintaining access comes in. There are various tools that allow one for attackers or maybe pen testers to try to maintain their access by installing a backdoor. So that anytime, like, they can always come back to that same test, and that's not the end. Then the last but not the least, which is also very important, is reporting and recommendations. You do a pen test, right? You've already discovered those services. You gathered information, you discovered the services, you exploited it. Maintaining access could always keep that, right? You've done post-exploitation, maybe trying to search more. Yeah, you already have the shell. Post-exploitation is like trying to get more information on the shell itself. Like anything inside that system, is there anything you could get maybe that could allow you to escalate to a higher privileged user and all. Now, the reporting and recommendation, which is very crucial, where you now will need to show the results of your pen test to an organization, maybe the management or the technical pen tester in the organization or technical IT staff in the organization. How are you now going to show and display this to them? So you need to know that good report is really key. So and it differs. What you're going to show it to an IT personnel in an organization would be screenshots as well as the commands you run so that they can replicate the attack. You might not need to provide all information, but you could also you can provide just the tools you use when with some data that at least is very meaningful with every process you went through needs to be recorded. Then for management, all you need to do is tell them, okay, so you found 6 bugs, 2 high, 3 critical, or 1 was low, and all that. They are more concerned about they're not concerned about the critical bugs, the total number of bugs. Then recommendations. All right, so okay, so hold on. So that's a question. Emmanuel says, I'm currently getting a button apply for instead of access content in the learning section. For those, if you should be able to have access to that, if you really registered for this October 30 days. Emmanuel, okay, you know what? You can message me after the class. I want to ensure that you guys are all on Discord, right? Have you guys, I don't know, joined the Discord channel? I mean, the links was provided to the attachment.
Yes, on Discord channel. I have joined.
Okay, so yeah, you guys could just message me there after this class.
Okay.
Yeah, so because of time. Great, all right, let's move on. Okay, so for recommendations, so you need to now tell you need to now give an explanation to the organization on what they need to do to fix those vulnerabilities you found. So first thing is, okay, so you found a weak version. What you'd recommend is the patch to the latest version, right? Okay, I think the boss is joining in. Well, let's move on. So basically, these are the 5 selection steps: information gathering, self-enumeration, exploitation, maintaining access or post-exploitation, as well as lastly, reporting and recommendation. Very key steps. Like you can't miss any. You can't do this without starting doing this. This is the first step you need to take. You need to know what you are trying to do. First, like identify. That's where the information gathering comes. You need to identify. Self-enumeration now starts to further enumerate more on what you've identified. After you've now gotten those names, the versions, you now have a better idea of what you're trying to do. Then you can now think about how you want to approach the box by exploitation, which angle you want to take. Then post-exploitation, can think about how you want to, what do you need more? Now that you have access to the shell, you've exploited it. What are the things you need? Do you need more credentials to other users? Do you understand? You want to do lateral movement, moving up the network, and all. Then reporting and recommendations. Okay, now that I've been able to exploit successfully, I've gathered all the necessary credentials or information. I just want to document it. I would have taken lots of screenshots. The commands would have been recorded on the notes. Then for recommendations, I'll give mitigations. What should be done to patch these vulnerabilities that I exploited? Let's move on. Note taking. Like I stated, information is key. So taking and keeping organized notes is vital. So we recommend that you document everything to start with. This includes all the console output as well as screenshots of the key events. So it's better to have too much than to repeat material in order to fill in gaps. Developing good documentation will also allow you to quickly find that long command that you used to exploit a given machine several days before. Should you ever need to re-exploit it or cross-reference users during post-exploitation after having successfully compromised each target machine. So a good documentation process will save you considerable time and a few edicts as well. True. I have a friend, right? So it was preparing for an exam. He had let's say 6 labs to do. He was able to successfully exploit these 6 labs. However, he had a problem because he failed. he was wondering why, because Eddie had the flags, Eddie had the, basically Eddie had all the flags and exploited all those 6 machines. But what was the issue? Reporting. Because the people trying to mark his lab report couldn't understand or replicate it. So they were not sure he actually exploited it successfully, even if he had the right flags. So that is why good reporting goes a long way. Shows that you know what you are doing, you know how you got there, and you understand. So basically, that's all about that, note taking. Let's talk about effective note taking or reporting. So reporting is often viewed as a necessary evil of penetration testing. So the guideline. So first thing you do is consider the objectives. What did you set out to accomplish? Is there a single or specific statement you hope to make in the report? Consider the audience. Executable summary for high-level, less technical executives, like I spoke about management. Then the more technical part of the report for other IT professionals or the team. Basically, the IT professionals in the organization, or maybe the internal pen test. Then consider what to include. Only include relevant and meaningful content. Reports do not have to be extremely long, really. Then lastly, consider the presentation. Write coherent sentences that flow smoothly, logically, and always spell check. So let's move on to IP address. So basically, an IP address is a unique address that identifies a device on the internet or a local network. So we have 4 octets. So note that the first octet ranges from 0 to 25, likewise for the other 3 octets. An IP address is a set of numbers that are divided into 4 octets. The value of each octet will summarize to be the IP address of the device on the network. Please note that this first, second, third, fourth octet should not go above 255, or it's an invalid IP address. All right, let's talk about public and private IP address. So the main difference between public and private IP addresses is how far they reach and what they are connected to. So a public IP address identifies you to the wider internet so that all the information you're searching for can find you. A private IP address is used within a private network to connect securely to other devices within the same network. So we can say, yes, this is a public IP and these are private IP networks trying to connect through the public IP to the internet. Like you stated, public IP address identifies you to the wider internet so that all information you're searching for can find you. It's safer to rather give your public IP address than your private IP address. Out. So your private IP address exists in the specific private IP address range reserved by the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, known as IANA, and should not appear on the internet. There are millions of private networks across the globe, all of which include devices assigned private IP address within these ranges. So for class A IP addresses, we have 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. This is a class A IP address. And for the class B, we have 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255, class B. Please note that it's reserved by what? The IANA. Class C, 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255. So this is a class C IP address. For the class, there's class D, there's class E. Class D is used for multicast, and I think class E is used for troubleshooting purposes. Then the public IP address range encompasses every number not reserved for the private IP range, not reserved for the private IP range. Since a public IP address is a unique identifier for each device connected to the internet, it needs to be unique. As more and more devices become connected, it is becoming increasingly harder to get a public a public address that isn't already in use. For example, Cisco, an industry giant in the world of networking, estimated that there would be approximately 15 billion devices connected on the internet by the end of 2021. If you have access to this PDF, you can always look at the link. So enter IP address version. So far, we have already discussed one version of the Internet Protocol addressing scheme known as IPv4, which uses a numbering system of 2 raised to the power 32 IP addresses, which is equal to like 4.29 billion. So you can see why there is such a shortage. I mean, 4.2, more than that. So the classes of IP address, do know that for the class A, we have 32 bits actually. The last bit is being reserved. Oh yeah, and the class D is for multi-networking, and class C address is reserved for future or experimental purposes. For class A, from 0 to 1, 0, 1 to 8, the network, the other 16, 24, 31 host. Please know that this 1 to 126, if you go back here, for class A, you know that within the range of 1 to 126, meaning 18, 10, as far as it's within this range of 1 to 126 is referred to as class A. For class B, if it's within 128 to 191, is a class B address. So yeah, it still falls under 129. Even if it's 130, 140, it still falls within. Then for class C, 192 to 223. Notice that 127 was not displayed. 127, that's the loopback address, localhost is reserved for development, debugging purposes. Let's look at IPv6. So IPv6 is a new iteration of the Internet Protocol addressing scheme to help tackle this issue. Although it is seemingly more daunting, it boasts a few benefits. So it supports up to 128 of IP addresses, which is like 340 trillion plus, resolving the issues faced with IPv4, and is more efficient due to new methodologies. Also, the address format, so it's 8 groups of 16-bit values separated by a colon. Leading zeros in each group may be omitted. So groups of zeros can be omitted with this double colon. Say we have an IPv6 address like this. Note that with 0.000, like 4 zeros, 4 zeros, 4 zeros, you could omit this as 1 0. Replace these 4 zeros as 1 0. These other 4 zeros as another 0. Or you could simply omit all this and give it 2 colons. All right, let's talk about localhost address. The localhost is a top-level domain reserved for documentation and testing purposes. So if you were to access HTTP localhost in a browser, the request will not be forwarded to the internet through the router, but will instead remain in your own system. So the localhost has the IP address 127.0.0.1, which refers to your own server. Please note that you could actually use HTTP 127.0.0.1, or you could use HTTP with the colon, the backslash, and localhost. So you could use localhost, you could use the IP. Regardless, it's still referred to as localhost. So what is your localhost in IPv4? That's 127.0.0.1. Then what's your localhost in IPv6? That would be 2 colons, then 1. So you can use 127 double colons 1. Address or media access control address is the 48 or 64-bit address associated with the network adapter. While IP addresses are associated with software, MAC addresses are linked to the hardware of network adapters. So it is sometimes called the hardware address, the born-in address, that's BIA, or the physical address. So they are expressed in hexadecimal notation in the following format. So say we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, AB. In this case, of a 48-bit address, then we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F in the case of 64-bit address. colons are sometimes used instead of dash. So you could replace the dash with a colon. So MAC addresses are often considered permanent, but in some circumstances they can be changed. Yes, malicious hacker can decide to change his MAC address to yours, do a malicious attack on a victim shell. But yeah, MAC addresses are actually considered permanent. So for example, we have like A4C3, F085, AC2D. The blue bits indicate, so basically from here indicates OUI, which is organizationally unique identifier of vendor who built the network interface, while the other last 3 bits indicates NICS, which means network interface controller specific, or you can call it UAA, or you can call it unique address of the network interface. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can show you. Say you want to check the OUI or the MAC address, you can always gain access to this site. So I copy this. I do a lookup for the address. Sorry, hold on. Okay. MAC address. Why? Maybe this issue. But let me show you another one. Oh, there's something wrong here. Even with the full, it should work. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, let's not waste our time. Let me check for the second one. Okay, I see why. Mistake on my part. Hold on. Yeah. Okay, so with this, you could get the first 3 that states the OUI, is it private, false, the company Intel. So you could see this gives you at least a bit of information getting the MAC address. Let's try the other one again. Sorry, hold on. Okay, it gives you the vendor Intel. I see people have already done that, isn't it? Okay, that's that about this. So you could actually have use this tool to check more about MAC address. I'll share this in the chat. So that's the other one. Okay, that's that. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk about TCP, UDP, right? So for TCP, it's connection oriented, and UDP, that's connection type. The protocol TCP, reliable, best effort UDP. So UDP is mostly used for YouTube, tunneling, VPN, while for TCP is used for web, SSH, FTP, POP, and all that. You better understand as we move on. So for the connection type, is connection oriented, like provides reliability and error correction and detection. So it guarantees of delivery. Yes, because it's trying to check the three-way handshake. This ensures that the other party gets to receive the packet. So it adds a sequence number to each packet so that the other end can verify that the sequencing looks for missing pieces or packets. For UDP, it's connectionless oriented. It provides limited error checking, no data recovery features to recover from packet loss, and it does not offer retransmissions of packets in and of itself. It's also used for streaming. So for sequencing, it allows yes, then best effort no for UDP. Then it uses email file sharing downloading. So TCP is used for email file sharing downloading, while for UDP, voice streaming, video streaming, real-time services. And these are the examples for TCP and UDP. So let's talk about the three-way handshake. So this is the client, this is the server. First things first, the client tries to send a SYN packet. SYN means synchronized, right? So the server receives the SYN packet and sends a SYN plus an acknowledgement to the client. Then the client receives the SYN acknowledgement and sends an acknowledgement which the server receives. So they've been able to establish a three-way handshake. So this is TCP. Going back to when you want to terminate a connection, notice for trying to establish a connection, SYN acknowledgement packet as the final and the beginning SYN. Whereas when you're trying to terminate the connection, you should show fin, like finish. Fin plus acknowledgement as well as acknowledgement. So the client sends a fin packet, the server receives it, sends a fin with an acknowledgement, client receives it and as well sends an acknowledgement to the server. Let me show you something briefly. Hold on, like a sample connection. So I use my Kali. I'm going to use Wireshark. All right, before I begin, sorry, hold on. Okay, so basically, what's a Wireshark? It's a network protocol analyzer, really. I'm going to do a ping here. Before I begin, let me stop this. Do this again. No, yes, Google, yes. All right, notice at the start, basically this is my NAT address, my I do if config, like I spoke about, you'd see 10.0.2 is my IP address. Please know you could just do if config. Right, as well as do IPA. So this is localhost for Ethernet IP address. Is IPv6. And if you have Docker installed, then put Docker. This is where you say inet IP. All right, back to. So I decided to do a ping, like ping request, ICMP echo request, right? So what happens here? Let me expand this. I can explain. So I was trying to do a DNS query on google.com, right? Then ping request with reply. Still doing more on DNS. If you notice the protocol is displayed here, this source and destination. So for my IP destination, how it's going through DNS. So notice I did 3 echo requests. First with the reply, second request with the reply, third request and the reply. And as soon as it was done, connection was cut off. If you scroll down, notice, sorry, hold on, let me put all right, notice after the DNS request, when I was trying to do a TCP connection, what was the first you see? SYN is sent, SYN acknowledgement. Notice my IP to this Google IP, right? Google IP replying to what? My IP address with a SYN acknowledgement. And lastly, my IP to Google IP giving what? An acknowledgement. After that was done, as soon as the connection was terminated, remember there's a FIN to terminate the connection, right? FIN to FIN acknowledgement from IP to Google, likewise from Google to my IP, anything an acknowledgement. So that's that about that. I just want to show you guys how it really works using Wireshark to analyze. Okay, back to. So let's talk about common ports and protocols. You need to familiarize yourself very well, especially in cybersecurity. You need to know the common ports. Especially if you're doing a pen test, you're going to see some of these ports a lot. I think most of it, yes. You're going to see it a lot. So for FTP, it's connected with 20 and 21. SSH, which is a TCP, is connected with 22.22. Telnet 23, SMTP 25, which is Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, then DNS 53. I don't know if it was cancelled it. I wanted to show you, I don't know if the port was there. But DHCP, you can exclude this. I mean, it's not going to appear. DHCP is just like an automatic way of giving IP addresses. When you don't start manually giving IP addresses, like static, you use DHCP, so Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, IP address, to assign IP addresses to multiple systems. So that's UDP 67, 68. Then we have HTTP, which is key. Definitely see this a lot, which is denoted with 80.80 TCP. Then POP, Post Office Protocol version 3, TCP as well, 110. You'd see this as well. Then NetBIOS, mostly for Windows, definitely see it. It's denoted with 137, 138, 139. IMAP, I think once in a while you might actually see this. Internet Message Access Protocol. I think, yeah, you'd actually see this as well. 143 TCP. And lastly, HTTPS. So basically, you're going to see all these. I think you won't really see this at all. You won't see this TCP. But most of this, but you're going to see all. Let's just say you're going to see all except this. This is really rare. Then HTTPS is denoted with 443, which is also protocol TCP. All right, I think that is all for today. But I need to confirm you guys have installed your VirtualBox with your Kali instance. Then I want to ensure you guys have registered on ActBox, TryAcme, Portugal Academy, because for your simulation exams, you guys are going to use ActBox to explain to you guys for assignments, TryAcme, then definitely your Kali VM, where you're going to do your pen test and